Hello everyone. I just wanted to bring you a little chatty video about something I've been thinking about a lot, and that is advertising and how brands are the same and they will try and tell you that they're not, but they are. So we're just gonna go through a little bit of a history about brands. This is something that I personally became interested in when I got so freaking tired of hearing all of these brands say, we are disrupting the blank industry. It's very, I know this is a dumb analogy, but it's very, I'm not like other girls. It's very a ploy to make it seem like, oh, we're not like other brands. We're a cool brand, but it's all the same. It's all the same. And so we're just gonna walk through a little bit of history about advertisements and see how we ended up here. This isn't a super heavily researched video. This is based on just kind of a mixture of information that I have from various places, so sorry if I get something wrong, please let me know. I'm gonna do the best I can. This is probably not the earliest advertising, but the earliest advertising that I know of, or that I think is kind of in this history, is medicine shows. And medicine shows started in, I want to say, about the 19th century. Essentially, you would have a doctor or an apothecary who would travel around from town to town and put on a show and be like, look, my thing cures you. They would bring someone up from the audience and be like, sir, what do you have going on? And they would be like, oh, my leg is broken. And they would give them an elixir and be like, wow, it's fixed. The general idea was doctors are bad. And at the time, that's very fair, because if you went to a doctor, they might put leeches on you. They might just cut your leg off. They were basically saying, all right, so doctors are bad, but we're good. We have the real cure that no one else will sell you. Does this sound familiar? And they would essentially just sell you random garbage. If you want to learn more about this, I suggest Maintenance Phase's episode on snake oil. It's very much like that Sweeney Todd song where they're trying to sell this like elixir and it's just like piss in a bottle. Same stuff. I was just thinking about a version of Sweeney Todd where instead of trying to sell the miracle elixir, he's selling sex dust. We have the medicine show. Very much a, we're not like doctors, we are selling you something that actually works, buy it. And there were all sorts of deceptive tactics that went into this. Some of the things they were selling probably worked, some of them didn't. Moving on. We're gonna skip a little bit of time. So I want to skip ahead to the infomercial. And in the infomercial, this is a classic. I'm sure you all have an idea of what this is. You know, someone's sitting on the couch, they have a bowl of Cheetos, they flip it onto the ground, and they're like, oh no, and they sell you something to fix that problem. So that's a very classic, you have a problem, we have a solution. Let me demonstrate the problem, and then we'll sell you the solution. And the problems would sometimes get kind of blown out of proportion, and the solutions would be buy this thing. A lot of infomercials, I would say, aren't even trying to, they're not trying to scam you usually. They're just selling things in a way that now is so dated that we look at it and we're like, this is an insane way to sell me something. And so from there, we move into the us versus the leading brand advertisements. And this was really the bulk of advertising when I was growing up. So you would have, you know, like Brawny paper towels, and it'd be like us, and it would clean up and be like the leading brand, and your paper towels would just like dissolve and then punch you in the face. This was a really big format for a while, and they even had the I'm a Mac, I'm a PC ad as a very kind of clear example of this idea where you're saying, all right, we are this thing, and we are going to represent to you what we want you to think this other thing is. So they're, at this point, not just selling you the product, but they're selling you the idea that the other guy is trying to pull one over on you, is bad, is criminal, is dumb. I would say that that's kind of a shift, not totally new. It's not like this was a brand new idea, was to say that other companies did stuff bad, but this was very much like the primary way that I saw cleaning things and tech sold when I was a kid. This is kind of also tied into when you look at like diet culture, the way they'll sell, oh, we have 80% less fat than the leading brand or whatever. Very much not only selling you the idea of the product, but also that other products are bad. So I think that's kind of the main point of this thing, was it was taking the idea that you need to sell the consumer on the idea that they have a problem that they didn't know they had, and that problem is this thing you've been using is actually broken and bad, and you're a fool for using it. I think that we all kind of got tired of that pretty quickly. I want to say in like the early 2010s, maybe the mid 2010s, there was this shift where people really stopped responding to that kind of advertising. It's not like everyone all at once was like, no, I won't buy this, I'm gonna go with the leading brand. But there was kind of this shift where people weren't so much looking to commercials as advertising, and so commercials really became this like brand recognition tool more than a let's explain to you why to buy our product tool. The let's explain to you why to buy our product tool, why to buy our product tool, I would argue shifted over to influencer marketing. So now you have influencers who are selling their fan base, it's often children, things, products. I want to say didn't get big until the last 5 years, maybe 10 years, probably like 5 years. But there was this big shift where people were not just recognizing a product because an influencer was selling it to them, but often would buy it because they feel like they have this kind of connection to that influencer. The parasocial relationship that you build up with an influencer or a YouTuber or a TikToker will make you feel like when you buy something, you are more connected to that person. So it's selling you this entirely different thing from what other brands were selling you. It's a little more like a celebrity sponsor an item, which I would say was not it was not the primary way that at least I saw advertising as a kid, but it did really shift and make a really big kind of emergence in the past few years. And now we have brands that I would argue are kind of trying to position themselves there. It's kind of a combination of a lot of these other things. They're trying to sell you this idea that the other brands are lying to you or selling you a bad thing. But we have a good thing, and we are disrupting the industry. A short way to figure out if someone's actually disrupting the industry is take a look at what they're doing. So if I sell beds, I'm not disrupting the bed industry because that's what the bed industry does. They're lying to you, and it's a marketing tactic, and I don't think it's any more or less manipulative than any other marketing tactic. But it personally offends me the most because I think it's so frustrating and it's very effective. And that's, I think, a big part of it is very effectively these companies can say, we're doing something different without doing anything different at all. And this is something I talk about in my bra startup video. It's just in my opinion, particularly heinous way to alienate someone from this entire market that is serving their needs and tell them, hey, all of that stuff is actually bad and out to get you, but don't worry, we're here for you, so just buy from us, please. This isn't like specific to startups either. I'm not trying to say that like this is just a startup thing, but I just see it a lot there. I think if I can impart one thing from this history, this very loose and scattered history I've given you, it is that brands are not your friends. Brands are trying to sell you something. A lot of brands are trying to sell you something because they think you'll like it and it'll be useful to you. But they're still just trying to sell you something. So if a brand is trying to sell you something beyond the product, take a look at what they're saying and try and figure out. So if we take a look at, for example, Sheertex, which is that like indestructible tights brand, they're a great example of this because they do a really classic us versus other tights kind of thing. Pull on like other tights and they'll just absolutely like tear the shit out of that. Then you'll pull on Sheertex tights and they'll be fine. So they're not just trying to sell you, hey, Sheertex tights are really strong. They're trying to sell you and all other tights are bad. And I think one of the interesting things about a lot of these ploys is that a lot of these are kind of mid-market offerings that are trying to sell to a group of people who have never bought the mid-market version of that product and tell them, you need to buy this thing, and then they do that by comparing it to the much lower market version of that same product instead of the kind of direct competitors. This is something I see a lot. Even if you look at something like customized hair companies, they do this where they'll usually be selling to people or advertising through people who have only used like drugstore, just whatever they could get off the shelf, shampoo and conditioner, and it's like, well, now you're paying $20. It seems like you should be comparing to similar price points. This is really big with bras. This is what Third Love and Pepper do. They're both very into saying other brands are like this, and then they'll try and show you something that is just like, oh, just a much lower end version of what they're trying to sell you. And they'll say, instead, buy this thing. But if you look at it, their item is just either exactly the same or not quite as good as other items on the market that are at the same price point. I hope that made sense. Let me try and summarize that in one sentence. If we look at different parts of the market, so we have, you know, our cheaper items, our mid-market items, and our luxury items. Mid-market is where a lot of these disrupting the blank industry companies thrive. And so they will make a product that is mid-market. And when you're in that price point, usually it'll be higher quality. It's usually good enough that you're going to get all of the benefits of a higher quality item. And what they're doing is, instead of comparing themselves to their competitors, so instead of Third Love comparing themselves to other $70 bras that are made in a lot of sizes, they compare themselves to $20 and $30 bras from Walmart or Target or something like that. And so you're kind of taking advantage of the fact that these people haven't tried a $70 bra and don't know what it can be like. And so when they try the Third Love or the Pepper one, they're like, wow, this is so much better than the $20 bras I've been buying. But in reality, really what they are is just kind of another player in the mid-market space. They're all just trying to sell you something. Brands have always had to position themselves as offering you something, and at different points, a big part of the way that they do that is by positioning other companies that sell the same thing as your enemy. And so they're selling you multiple ideas. So I would just encourage you, when you see an ad for an item or a service or anything, take a look at what they're selling and see, all right, are they just selling me the product, or are they trying to sell me something else, an idea or an identity? And if so, do I want to be sold that thing? And some brands will try and sell you these things, and you might be like, I'm not buying that identity or that idea, but I do want to buy this product, and that's totally fine. It's just good to be aware of, because these companies are very good at pretending that they are more on like the influencer side. They'll, they'll show off their 20-something CEO who's like, I did this because I care about people, and it's like, maybe you did, but you're still just trying to sell me something. So it's just all about awareness. I just kind of want to give you the tools to really unpack the advertisements you're seeing so that you can make choices based on what you want and not based on what these companies are trying to sell you. That's all. I hope this was informative or useful in some way. I will talk to you guys next week. Please let me know if you have any favorite nasty ads. And yeah, I hope you all have a great week. Bye.